Hi, and welcome to our third micro lecture for week one. And in this final micro lecture, I'm just going to go a little bit more into the software we're using, After Effects, and kind of cover some of the resources that we're going to be using to support you as you learn the software. I just showed another sequence which had some really great examples of motion design, and it was actually outlining some of the trends from a couple of years ago that are still, pretty popular. And I'll be showing you some more videos that I guess display some of the kind of really contemporary styles that are happening at the moment in the space. It's worth noting though that sometimes it's not worth copying or trying to replicate what's popular because it can become cliched, it can date work, and it depends on the context of what you're creating, whether you should be looking at the latest styles or you should be trying to create something unique and different. That all comes into play. Okay, so in terms of motion design, and I think it's really good to reiterate, just as I'm going to go and talk about the technical side of the unit, that it is about a mindset, it is about understanding the theory, it is about coming up with strong concepts, not worrying about technical proficiency, but having that blank page in your process journal or wherever you jot down ideas and dreaming and coming up with those design solutions that, you worry about how you execute it afterwards. I think that's really important with a field like this. And I've got a quote here from this book, which is all about motion design. I'll be putting readings and so forth up throughout the semester. But the quote reiterates, motion design is not about knowing how to use software, nor is it the gratuitous flashing graphics that we see on local television for a car dealership or appliance store. It is a creative mindset that enables us to construct multi-dimensional narratives that stimulate the senses, trigger emotion, hold our attention, and enhance understanding. Motion design is about the careful and purposeful use of moving images, content, and sound to convey messages. It is thoughtful, delightful, and grounded in human, not technology-centric principles. So, as you start to learn the software, I just want you to remember, often it's about silence, space, elements of, I guess, you almost become like a conductor. And we talked in the earlier lecture just about this idea of a new design factor that you have to consider, which is designing with time. These are all really important things to consider when you start to dig into this software, because there seems like there's a million trillion things you can do, and it's quite complicated, some of the processes. I think if you take a step back and don't forget that it's about the concept and then thinking about how to execute it and just researching and then following is the right sort of process. And I'll be talking more about process next week. But it is very much about mindset, and it's not about just knowing the software. And certainly the biggest thing I would suggest is that you do have a good understanding of what you want before you sit down at a computer, that your idea doesn't emerge by you playing and fumbling around in the software, which often happens. And that does not make you an expert as a designer. It makes you someone playing with software. So just something to consider. Ideas first, and the software is a tool. It's not for ideas to be brainstormed on the fly. And so this is After Effects. The interface is more complicated than software like Photoshop and so forth, because of course you're dealing with time and timelines. Adobe After Effects, really important to know, it's the industry standard. It's like the best of the best for digital visual effects, motion graphics, not for 3D, but we're going to be dealing with a lot of movement, and we don't need to start going into 3D software straight away, but there is an option in the second assessment if you wanted to dip your toe in that sort of stuff. It's used in post-production processes, among other things. After Effects can be used for keying, tracking, compositing, and animation, and you'll get a better understanding of all those terms if they're unfamiliar for you in next week's lecture. It also functions as a very basic non-linear editor, audio editor, and a media transcoder. So it's not just for making videos. There's a lot of different purposes for the software. People that work on it every day and spend their whole day on After Effects often don't know how to do everything in the software. It means you have to kind of self-serve. If I've got a particular task, you'll need to research how to do it to actually employ it. Most people don't know all the processes on the fly, even if they're working with After Effects day in, day out. We're going to introduce you to the basic principles, like what is the structure, how to do the basic things like filming something, putting it into After Effects, editing it, adding audio, doing some filters and stuff like that. And then as you start to work out what your assessment is going to be, what your key work is going to be, it'll be a case of really looking at, well, what are the best techniques? How do I do that in After Effects? And it's it's a slow process, but you'll get there. Just an interesting thing is in 2019, the program won an Academy Award for scientific and technical achievement. And, it is, what we see in so many movies, all the effects, powers coming out of people's hands, people growing and shrinking and all that sort of stuff. They're all the things you can play with in this program. But again, I would say come up with the idea. Don't just find some little tricks that you can do in After Effects and let that define the direction of your work necessarily. So this brings us to next week. In my lecture next week, I'm going to focus on process and workflow. How do we develop a concept? How do we go about bringing it alive in After Effects? What is the nature of After Effects, the foundations of it? What are the things we need to consider? We'll cover that in the lectures, and then when you start your tutorials, we're actually going to be embedding all that by you actually grabbing footage, putting things around, going through the process. So you'll find that the lecture and the tutorial will work hand in hand to introduce you to the process of motion design and actually then executing it in the class. Some of the learning resources that we're going to give you as you start to work on your assessments and really develop skills are the bootcamp activities, like you'll start next week. We've also got some custom videos that are going to support you. So when I say custom, they're our videos that we've created for the unit to support you as you go through certain key stages in creating files and working with files. And we'll also have your tutors doing one-to-one consultations and be able to give you feedback on your work. And as I said in the prior micro lecture, we're going to have a couple of these boot camps where you get to work on a project as a class and help each other, and that will help you just get the skills embedded before you go off and work on your own project. As you work on your own project, we'll be also showing you lots of different resources. You'll start to understand, because of your concept, what you really want to achieve with your design, and then we'll give you a lot of different resources to help support that, as well as giving you ongoing consultation. So we have got a lot of exclusive Adobe tutorials and resources that we'll be putting on Blackboard as we go through the semester. We've also been looking and curating, I guess, the best YouTube videos that are out there that are really great at identifying a specific task that you might want to do or a specific effect and taking you through that step by step. So we'll be curating a lot of that content to support you, and that's where we'll be looking at what you're working on too and making sure we have content to cover some of this stuff. As well, we have, and this is a really, really good resource, we have an exclusive contract with Lincoln Learning. So this is material that you can't access publicly, and it's all about motion design and using After Effects. They're probably some of the best resources in the world to learn the software. So as much as we'll be learning in class, I would really, really encourage you to go through and do these activities in LinkedIn Learning, and we'll be releasing different content in different weeks. And then we'll actually, I guess, signpost specific things you might want to do if there's a particular type of effect or approach that you want to take in your design work. So there'll be much more to come, but I just want you to feel that there's multiple ways to learn, and we'll be offering as many as we can as we go through the semester. Another thing to think about, I guess, and I brought up the fact that we have got all of our classes in the computer labs to ensure everyone has an opportunity to engage the software, whether they can afford it or not. But if you're in a situation now where you're in third year and you're thinking of going into industry and you haven't yet join Creative Cloud, Adobe Creative Cloud, which gets you access to over 20 of their, industry-leading applications, as well as applications on your iPad and on your iPhone as well, which are getting better and better. The sort of Photoshop and the Illustrator versions that are happening on mobile devices are just getting really, really good. It might be worth thinking about joining up Creative Cloud right now, because if you are graduating at the end of next year, or at the end of this year, I should say, you won't be eligible for a student membership anymore. So maybe it's the time where you actually want to, if you don't already have a Creative Cloud, join. You don't need to do this unit, but you might find it really helpful. Certainly the computers in the computer lab, though, will be able to deal with the file sizes that you're dealing with. So there is a possibility that you might find your laptop is really pushed to its limit with some of the work you do this semester, but don't be scared about that. That's something you can talk to your tutors about as well. I have mentioned that with your second assessment too, there's a lot more flexibility in terms of what software you might use. So as much as we're going to embed and make sure that we develop some key skills in After Effects with this first assessment, the idea with the second assessment is to build upon After Effects with what you're creating, if it's appropriate for the sort of project you want to do. But there will be an opportunity to learn other software like Blender, which is this amazing 3D orientated software that's free. But there's lots and lots of different software that's out there, and we'll be introducing you to that and supporting your needs with that software as well. So I guess I want to kind of emphasize, as much as this is driven by using a particular software program, it is not defined as a unit by the software. So we're going to be exploring lots of things. One final thing before we finish our first series of lectures for the unit, I just want you to potentially go out and look for some inspiration. This is a sort of unit where it should feel like a hobby. It might be you're already following a lot of motion designers on Instagram. If you have an Instagram account and you're following a lot of graphic people, maybe look around. So this is the After Effects Instagram account. Lots of great examples, but there's some really edgy and cool stuff by practitioners that are out there as well. We can suggest some for you as we go through the semester, but I'd really encourage everyone to start just immersing yourself in all the stuff that's around at the moment. And I find one of the best things to do is just to be following stuff on Instagram and just getting kind of, lots of cool stuff every morning or throughout the day. That really helps my understanding of what's out there and what's possible. So that's one thing, I guess, if I'm going to give you some homework for the week, is start following some motion designers that you think are great. Okay, well, it was great doing this first lot of lecture series for you, and I hope you really enjoy the unit, and I'll see you later in the week when I publish the next series of lectures.